So I'd like to talk a little bit about presenting concerns. And what I mean by this is when clients show up for a first session, they could have had an intake with your institution at your practicum setting. Maybe it's an outreach capacity. Regardless, this may or may not be the first meeting with a healthcare practitioner. However, this could also be their first meeting with any healthcare practitioner. So one of the things that I like to talk about is that basically I view therapy as starting from the moment that person makes contact. So I see intake as actually being a therapy interaction because we have to nurture that relationship with that person. So regardless of where you're seeing this person, even if they have a previous history of seeing counselors or other healthcare practitioners, it's really important, I think, to get the story. And while we have lots of things to take down or enter into systems, there's some basic questions that need to be asked for sure. And the first one is always something that just relates to building that commonality, building that relationship. So I usually will open with, tell me what brings you in today. What's the primary thing that's going on for you, and just giving the individual time to talk about why they're coming in. Sometimes they'll have very few words to say. Other times there'll be quite a bit of information. So you have to sort of juggle that time. My take on this from doing, a lot of therapy, a lot of intake, is that giving them more freedom on the front end will always serve you well moving forward, and it'll help that person feel comfort in their, in telling their story at that point. Just make notes as you're going along. And if there's strong emotions that come up for your client, just give them the space to work on the safety. So let them know that you're fine just sitting with them for a moment, whatever they need to do. Because often it's been a while that people have been sitting with these things and it feels almost like a release or just a sudden rush of emotion while just talking about what's going on. The other thing is to do a thorough family history. Just talk about their connections with family. Are there good relationships? Where are they located? Do they remain in contact with parents or siblings? I always like to ask, are there other people, friends that they consider to be family? When, in courses that I've taught before, when we do a genogram, it often comes up is that they see their friends or neighbors as their adopted family, and often people have stronger relationships. So I like to account for that. And this also plays into what would be sort of a safety net that you can build for individuals. But probably the main thing that I wanted to talk on today is really important information. And what I've always done is use SIGI caps, and that is spelled SIGECAPS. So those letters start or correspond with particular presentation issues. So I'll expand on that a bit right now. S stands for sleep. And when you're talking about sleep, basically you want to ask them if they've had any changes in their sleep pattern, how much sleep they usually get a night. Do they snore, not snore? How do they feel during the day? Do they feel awake? Do they feel refreshed when they wake up? Just sort of get an idea about how things have changed or stayed the same. I stands for interest. So do they have hobbies? Do they have things that they engage in? Do they have friends that they like to see on a regular basis? Is there any change there? So you're trying to get a baseline of what's presenting in session, and if this has changed at all recently or has it been a long-standing change. G stands for guilt. And sometimes this can be a difficult one, so I like to be quite gentle and give them space and explain a little bit more. So when I talk about guilt, I'll often say, are there things that are weighing heavily on your mind? Are there some regrets that you have or actions that you wish that you did differently? Oh, is there anything that fits for you in terms of guilt? Because, research shows that feelings of guilt can sometimes really impact individuals in terms of their mental health. So it's a good question to ask. E stands for energy. And of course, this is tied into sleep and sleep disruption, but also just in terms of people that present with extreme anxiety or malaise, depression, there can be quite a feeling of a lack of energy. But also for some presentations, you will hear people talking about manic periods, right? Where they have boundless energy. And you really want to be able to go a little bit deeper in here and find out, is this a recent change? How long has it been going on? Important questions to ask. Again, looking for anything that sort of goes outside the usual pattern. C stands for concentration. And for those people that have had periods of depression in their past, in particular, you'll note that concentration is a pretty clear indicator at times that something is going on. Unable to read, focus on the television, losing their train of thought. And again, sort of a noted change from what it was before. Some people with other presentations will report having a longstanding issue around concentration. So it's really important to ask those questions. A stands for appetite. So how are they eating? How are they feeling around food? Are they noting that there's been weight gain or weight loss? Are they eating regular meals? Are they missing meals? What's going on there? Again, a very important question related to appetite. P stands for psychomotor agitation. So this is basically feeling agitated in the body, right? So this could be, some people describe it as shaking or having a bit of a tremor at times, feeling that their face is getting flushed, anger sort of coming out in parts of the body. You really, again, want to personalize it to the person sitting in front of you and explain what psychomotor agitation is, or just use a term like, do you feel any sort of agitation, or do you feel anything coming out in your body as related to your moods, perhaps, right? That can be one that you need to flush out more with individuals. And last but not least is S, which stands for suicide or thoughts of suicide or suicidality. And this is a very important question. And the one thing I want to say is that in terms of doing a risk assessment for suicide, it's important to note that you're really not going to bring on someone, furthering their desire, intent to commit suicide by talking about it, right? It's important to be direct around here and just, some people will say absolutely not, and that's fine. But other people will say, they have had thoughts. So what you'll want to ask is, how often have those thoughts been coming? Is there anything around a specific plan that you have? Like, how would you do it? And you also want to look at intent. So given that situation, given that scenario, how able are they to stay safe? And often you'll want to do this on a sliding scale. I do 1 to 5, 5 meaning it's imminent, 0 meaning that there's no risk. And you can do this for also, the thoughts, having a particular plan in place. Do that sort of scale, a Likert scale, if you will. You can do 0 to 10, whatever works. But based on that, you really want to rule out any sort of risk factors. You also want to know if it's a specific plan, do they have access to means to do it? Some people will talk about, I think about hanging myself. Do they have access to a rope? Again, getting very specific. And once you have an idea around the level of thoughts, the level of intent, also the lethality of the method. So obviously some ways of committing suicide are more likely to result in death than others. So you want to be able to gauge this lethality for sure. And once you have this information, you want to be able to do a risk assessment in terms of, do they feel that they can remain safe? How safe do they feel around being by themselves? Do they have a support network, people they can talk to outside of, talking to you at the current moment? And do they feel comfortable reaching out to these individuals, talking about how they have thoughts? Are they able to stay with friends or family when they're having these intense thoughts? And one thing I like to do as well is, in that sort of safety plan that you're putting together, talk with the individual about what 3 things can you do in the moment to help reduce those thoughts. So some people will talk about, lying down, putting an ice pack on their forehead. Other people will talk about putting on some music, going for a long walk, doing something that takes them out of the norm a little bit. So it's important to talk about these activities that can help benefit them in getting through the moment. And so when you've done that risk assessment, obviously there's on the top end in terms of what you would do about establishing safety. Does that person need to be seen by another practitioner, or do they have to be seen by an outreach team? You really need to be able to see, are they safe staying in the moment? And what's their safety going to be like when they leave session? Often, as I will find that when you're going through this risk assessment safety plan, it's important to say, this is for you. So you want to be able to present them with their sort of plan in terms of reducing these thoughts. So they've mentioned things that help. You want to be able to talk about these things, put them down on paper, and then give them something to take away out of session. But you must ensure that they can say, and you can document, that they feel safe getting through the day. They have a plan in place if these thoughts increase and they're not feeling safe. And also, depending what you are, there usually will be a crisis line available. Ensure that you put the number of the crisis line down on that piece of paper that you give them. Talk about the process, about what it means when they call in, what it looks like. And by doing so, you have effectively set up a safety plan for this individual.